On the subject of tithing, which doesn't mean a damn thing to anyone outside of church. Side note. When people walk into church and the first thing you talk about is how to donate money, like goodbye to 50% of our prospective clergy. That's
interesting because where we've gone a few times, I haven't noticed them talk about that at all.
That place doesn't.
Well, I guess I don't need to. But
yeah, we're talking. Yeah,
I think they do one series a year about it, and then
something like that. Yeah,
and then they don't talk about it every single Sunday.
Yeah, they don't talk about it, and I don't know all the ins and outs of their place, but what I did want to talk about was a thought that I had one day at that place. So my thought was that for me now, tithing is now not tithing, because the whole idea behind tithing is that you're trusting God with your finances. This is what we've been force-fed. Mm-hmm. You're trusting God. Not that I don't think it's good to be generous and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's great things. Like, I agree and I disagree about some things, So, but part of the reason for tithing that people say, church leaders use this to say, is like, you want to break that spirit of greed, so be generous to us.
Or a generational curse of poverty.
Right. Yeah. Being generous. You want to combat that generational demon of greed, right. Of poverty, which you could extrapolate some normal way of saying that from the idea, but in church they just weird it out.
Yeah.
So it's like when they talk about like a car or what do they call it when it's like murdered out?
Huh?
Murdered out.
Murdered out?
Yeah. Isn't that when like something's like chromed out or something murdered out?
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah. No. Too white up in here.
I guess so.
Murdered out. It's like
I grew up in the suburbs. I don't know.
Well, it's like, I think it's when, you buy like you got a car, like a sick car, and you deck it out with all the bells and whistles. White people call it bells and whistles.
Okay. Tricked out.
Okay. Pimped out, murdered out.
It could just be like a NorCal, SoCal thing.
I don't know.
There's still some language barriers there for us.
Yeah. I totally forget what I was going to say. I was going to say, because church people weird it out. They weird everything out.
Yeah.
All this normal shit. They got to make it hella weird.
That's true.
Sorry, I cussed too much. So they weirded it out.
Yeah.
Just the word. I mean, this is the 2000s. And we're still calling it a tithe. Can't you just call it a donation?
You could.
Why don't you just call it a donation?
Because if you call it a tithe, then that...
Okay, call it a tenth. I know where you're going with this.
That's not where I was going.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying that it ties it to something biblical that they can make you feel guilty for not doing.
Yeah. One of the big ideas that goes along with, the tithe messages is like your faith level. And do you tithe enough to really feel it, brother? Are you putting yourself in an uncomfortable spot?
I'm being triggered.
Are you sacrificing food on the table to make sure you are being generous above and beyond your tithe? Well, okay, so now I'm talking about two different things, tithing and offering. But anyway, so I had this thought in church that tithing now for me is to not tithe, because to tithe became such a duty that it actually took more faith for me to stop tithing, because I was so afraid of God smiting me and putting a cap on my finances, because I wasn't tithing anymore. So even after we left church, I had this compulsion to tithe for like a year and a half. And when I finally stopped, I feel like it was really like a faith moment for me. It was like, I just don't see the value in what I'm doing right now anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm giving money. I'm literally picking a place. I don't even go to church anymore because I think they're like the least screwed up church that I can find. And I'm tithing to them to please God. And so that's not really faith anymore. That's like what literally, like, it's religion. Which religion is not faith. Religion is religion. It's, you just do it because you were force-fed that.
It's like a Pharisee.
Yeah, you do it out of fear because you don't want to go to hell. You don't want to you don't want to be kicked out of the synagogue. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I believed, this is my note, because of how much I believed I had to tithe to be okay. Now it takes more faith to know God has me when I'm not throwing money at him. It's like, I'm like, I don't want to be broke. Here, God, I'm going to give you my whole paycheck because my pastors told me, you know, like, you reap what you sow. Mm-hmm. You want a shit harvest, then sow shittily. You want an abundant harvest, then give with all you got.
Right.
And so that's it. That's all I have to say about that. I mean,
well, I also think it's interesting because, in my personal opinion, I feel like we have been way more blessed financially and from super odd, random ways. Like, now that we're not tithing versus when we were. And I don't think it's because, like, I don't know. I guess I feel like I think that God is showing us that we're doing something right and he has our back no matter what. And I think that he wants to show us that it's not about that, about just the tithing and obeying because somebody told you to or whatever, you know? And so I find that very intriguing.
Yeah.
And I think it's also interesting because it goes against everything that we were taught at the church that we used to go to. We were taught, like, if you don't tithe and also then go above and beyond, God's pretty much not going to bless you. Don't you want God's blessing on your life? Don't you want his blessing, like, on your family? Don't you want to leave them a legacy or whatever? Yeah. And it's like, wow, since we stopped, like, subjecting ourselves to that way of thinking, we've been way more blessed by God. And I know it's by God because it's, like, super fucking random ways that we are so not in control of. It's like, okay, cool. So
yeah, well, it's just a father. You believe in him as a father, and so you appreciate the ways that God provides for you. He doesn't provide every single need. Like, well, God, I don't feel like using my legs today. Would you use them for me and get me around? You know, it's like you got to use what he gives you,
right?
But at the same time, it's like, you know, it's more of a matter of recognizing that he's a father, a fatherly figure to you, and no matter how mad. You know, when you actually have a real life kid for yourself, you realize, like, how much you actually have to, like, do for them because you made them. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't depend on, like, their behavior or anything else.
Right.
And so it's like same thing with God. It's like it's such a bunch of bullshit to try and teach your congregation or something that, well, if you don't give us money, let's just put it in blunt terms. If you don't give us money for nothing, well, then Satan's going to come attack you. Satan's going to attack you and God's not going to protect you about it. Mm-hmm. And that's so stupid.
Right.
So stupid. But I do think, and I don't know why they can't just talk about this in normal words, normal, you know, in a normal way, like that there is a certain force that the gospel and the Bible and religion can have in the world, and if you don't help to contribute to that, it might not last. Mm-hmm. Might be real hard to continue it on, you know, like, because we're all part of it,
right?
Which, as we can see, there's also a force of evil in the world, and it can overpower.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to fight.
Right.
Don't be stupid. Do you like good things happening? Do you like the good things we're talking about here? Do you like having good friends and stuff? You know, if we have that, then tithe. Help us out. You know, but they just make it into this crock of shit.
Right.
A bunch of shit that really just, you're taking advantage of people because you think they're too stupid to just hear the truth about it. Thank you for checking out the Church Podcast. Please like and subscribe to our channel. To support the channel, go to patreon.com/The Church Podcast. If you have any information or an idea that could improve the Church Podcast, please leave a comment or leave a private message through our social accounts. Take care.